Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Dan and I'm a final year Masters of Architecture student in the UK. In today's video, I'm going to be going through my current architecture design projects and hopefully bring some value to those of you who are studying the course and also some of you who are thinking of studying architecture in the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the front cover of the page just says, my name, the name of the module itself and the design diary, because that's what it is. The studio that I've been in this year is called a hyperconnectional archipelago and employing architecture and landscape as a means for negotiations between people and places in the time of climate change. And the studio that I'm in right now is really kind of focused on this combination of both architecture and the environment together and landscape, and it's such an important thing, especially as we're going through the current climate change and the actions that the world is going through right now. It's so important for us as architecture students to understand what's going on and to create these new generations of buildings, spaces and forms that can respond to that in such an effective way. And these are just some initial researches and things from the brief that I've taken out, and it's currently showing the work of James Corner, and it's something that's been pretty big in our studio, is understanding data, analysing data and reinterpreting it in our own ways. And just some history of Venice itself, because that's where the studio is this year. And again, just going through the brief, understanding what's going on, what are the main points that we need to consider, and how can we kind of extrapolate the information and apply it to what we want to bring to the city and the islands itself and the lagoon. Again, some initial precedents that the tutors have put on, and brief exploration looking at the work of people such as Carlo Scarpa, Tado Ando. And yeah, I wanted to kind of do some preliminary research in as many of the islands as I can in the Venice Lagoon. So first of all, we've got Murano, and then kind of seeing what's happening on the island, who are the people on the island, what are they doing, what are they interested in, what are the current architectural forms on the island, and if it's something of interest to me later on, then I can come back to it. And the second island being San Erasmo, this is more of a vegetation and more of a it's so visible from the pictures itself. It's just a green desert, not really deserted, but like heavily vegetated island. And people in my studio who are using this right now, their schemes are working with the current island, but also working with the data or future predictions of climate change and how that could affect not only the island itself, but the lagoon. And they're using this as kind of, they're creating architectural responses as a tool to then either support the island or the future kind of uses of the island. Third island itself, these are some of the ones that I did so many months ago that I can't even remember myself. I didn't even choose these ones, so I just wanted to do some preliminary research on them. The fourth one, this was quite interesting to see. And something else about the Venice island, the islands on the lagoon itself, is some of them are most of them are deserted, but some of them are actually owned by people. So it's one whole island, people could just buy them and they just build their houses and they stay there, which I think is actually, it's quite cool, to be honest. But at the same time, it's like, are we, or is the council, the government, or within Venice not thinking about the longevity and the long-term kind of impact that this could have if we're not kind of using these islands together as in a more connected way? Island 5, I think this was let me just read my notes. The ruins. It looks like it was a church of some sort or a building. I'm not quite, well, obviously a building, but I'm not quite sure what the use of this island was, but it's quite interesting. Island 6, again, this is the typical, people buying the islands, putting their houses on there. It's quite interesting to actually know the history of the islands themselves and what they used to be used for. Some of them were like, fortifications, but now they've just this whole new level of what people are using the islands for. Is it for a stronger purpose for the future, or is it like selfish needs? And this is such a battle that the people of Venice are having right now, between people actually buying homes within the island of Venice, but they're letting them out through Airbnb to create additional income for themselves, and they're living in the other part called Mestre, and they can obviously commute to Venice, but they're buying all these properties, they're buying all these lands, but they're not actually living there, and they're just renting it out to tourists when they come. And it's just this huge conflict that's going on, and has been going on for such a long time. Again, more island research, Burano is also one of the main islands that people in the studio are looking at. Some of them are creating their developments in response to the island. Mazorbo, I think I know one person in the studio who's doing working with this, and it's different levels. Obviously, we can see that Venice is such a flat, low-lying site. However, we kind of work with the topography and the levels, depending on the level and the height of the buildings on each island as well. We can instantly see these focal points. Don't know if it's a clock tower of some sort, but we can already see in these images working with the water, the land, the vegetation, and the different levels. And these are all things that we have to consider as architects, not only for my project and their project in my studio, but in every single project around the world. Island 10, Puerto de Novo. Not sure on this one. Oh yeah, privately owned island. People buying these places, having the land, not really doing much, just for selfish needs. Torcello, that's another one. Yeah, these ones. The next ones I'm about to show you. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, these. I think these was more kind of salt marshy, mud flat type lands that's been built up or covered or eroded away over time. San Ariano, Santa Cristina. Huge deserted islands, and where was the implication of the Mose system that they brought in to deal with the levels of flooding and sea level rise. These are temporary things that are going to not be useful in the maybe in the next couple of decades, but after that, what are the next kind of options that we have? What kind of systems and strategies to deal with these climate impacts? And we can see that things like this, things that are just people are buying these islands and not really doing anything with them. This could be the biggest factor of the downfall of Venice, possibly. I'm not sure. We will see. Another one. My goodness, how many islands did I have a look at? I think there's more. Okay, now we get into the data. So we have the Venice data. We're showing we've got the graphic of the historic and future sea level trends in Venice, the frequency of water level above 110 centimeters in Venice, things like this. The data is not lying. Venice is flooding more frequently and more severely, and it's kind of our jobs as architects and designers to use these natural phenomena as the true basis of how we're going to respond architecturally. We are not here just to create things that are aesthetically pleasing. Yes, of course they must be, and they have to be, because if we want people to use these spaces, then we need to design them effectively and in such a sophisticated manner. But at the same time, sophistication comes through the real purpose of the design. And if it's just there to be kind of this monument or this kind of figure, then it's quite outdated, and that's probably what used to be in maybe a couple decades ago. And even still now, we still see kind of projects and schemes that are built just for aesthetics. However, a stronger purpose is needed and a stronger impact to the site, and in my case, Venice, will be to create something that's going to be responding to these urgent sea level rises and the negative impacts of flooding that it's having on the people. The history of Venice. So, just going through these videos, kind of capturing kind of key snapshots. And some environmental research. Obviously, these are just some bullet pointed notes that I think I gave myself to look into. The culture of Venice, and some early kind of conceptual collages that I did. This wasn't just this was just areas within the lagoon that I just looked at. I was like, let me just merge some things together, go on Pinterest, cut things out, add them in. What does it look like scale-wise, aesthetic-wise? Does it work with the land and the water? Things like that. And again, more exploration. These are much, in my opinion, these are much nicer, but it's still futuristic kind of conceptual models and schemes and sketches that are so, how do I say it, abstract, that it's just idea generations. Aquatic architecture precedents. It's quite interesting that on this page I've included the Oceanic City by BIG Architects and Little Island by Hedwick Studio. These are projects that I've been looking at especially for my thesis dissertation, because my dissertation's on how can architects kind of capitalize on the use of computation to create more to create better schemes in response to the global rise in sea levels. And we're seeing right now kind of these schemes working with different levels, working with things such as floating structures, the different systems. Are they useful? Are they efficient? Or are they just short-term kind of strategies? Again, strategies that aren't really contributing to the overall improvement of the scenario. Again, more presidents taking a look at, was this the sponge city as well? No, this wasn't. This was the wetland. Some keynotes, some key points, some keywords for me to kind of just keep generating ideas. What comes to mind? Let me get this down. Can I research it? Can I do more? Can I have data to back that up? To back my point up, to create my manifesto? Things like that. Birds of the Lagoon, the kind of the aquaculture, and the kind of this what are the species, what's the environment within the water, because there's one half of the kind of the equation, if you like, that's on land, working on the land, creating this building, The other half, which is in my opinion the most important part, is what's in the water, where's the water coming from, what's the conditions of the water, and how is this affecting kind of the ecosystems within the lagoon itself. And from the research that I've done, the lagoon is actually depleting, species are becoming more at risk, and it's kind of this huge dilemma that that Venice is having that needs to be solved. Creating this kind of elevation profile of one of the islands I looked at. Research into salt marshes, mud flats, sponge cities. Sponge cities is such an unspoken, and in my opinion, such an underrated architectural strategy for dealing with these global sea level rises, and also severe storms, heavy, intense rainfall, things like that. Sponge cities are big in Asia. It's kind of something that they've been testing and trialing over there, and it has been working. There's proof, there's data. But the issue when it comes to kind of implementing strategies that work in a different continent to, say, Europe, is the climate, the weather. Do we have enough space, the land? Is the typology of the ground sufficient enough to deal with these conditions? But it's one of my favorite, well, so far, existing kind of tools that's being used and designed to deal with intense rainfall, over flooding, things like that. How to conserve Ramsar sites, looking into this, my tutors kind of put me on, do more research into the geography of the project, not just the architecture. This is an architecture and landscape studio. The architecture, we will grow over time and it will improve and develop. But the geography side of it and the landscape side of it, although I studied geography at A level, and in my opinion it was a shambles, but the key fundamentals and the key kind of standpoints that need to be understood for this project come through researching, reading, watching, documenting things that are kind of happening, why they're happening, and how can we improve the current state. Brief exploration. This was, I think, the first island I was looking at to create my project, which I've obviously changed now. More research. Another site section, this elevation profile of another island. And this was kind of the area that I was initially set on, and now I'm kind of looking at, I say visuals for Jesolo Lagoon, but it's kind of identifying key points or potential sites that I could explore further into for my scheme. Seasonality, oh my goodness, when we were doing research to come across to try and find some information on the lagoon in my area, just trying to, on Google, day and night, trying to find some sort of information to help me. I was like, dear God, please help me find some information for this project. And I came across this report that a student did a couple years ago, and it was literally on the exact area that I'm working on. I was like, I couldn't have asked for a better report. So it's taking these snapshots, understanding, trying to extrapolate the data. What does this mean for them, for the person who's created the report, and what can I use this data to kind of inform my design decisions? And the amount of key figures and such important values that this report had is truly remarkable. Average temperatures, average rainfall for Venice, but also these beautiful kind of maps, this hydrological analysis. Where are the water sources? Where are they leading to? Where have they come from? And this is I'm going to be thankful. I might just have to reach out to the person who made the report, you know. It's too good. It's way too good. Yeah, this collage I created of the agriculture and aquaculture, that was the word I was thinking of, agriculture and aquaculture of Yesolo. So the species on the land, on the water, what this means, and kind of things that I would have to also be thinking of in the future as I'm creating my scheme when it comes to, well, after the dissertation, at the end of the month, we'll be starting the project properly, the architectural project. And these are all things that I would have to be considering definitely, and things that I want to be considering, because the scheme is not just for now and for the next 10 years. This scheme that I'm proposing, this is a kind of a manifesto project, the project that's going to be working with the environment for years to come, decades to come, potentially centuries, and that's kind of the idea. But you know, there's so much work that has to go into this, which is quite exciting. It's challenging, but I feel like if you limit yourself to, I'm not going to do this project because I can't draw it, or I'm not going to do this project because I can't think of the systems, that's the limiting part, all in here. So by putting these out here, by putting these out there, the outlandish kind of ideas, objectives, things that are going to be necessary and required, that's kind of what's going to be pushing the concept. Research for the program, so things that I've been thinking of, things that I've been discussing with my tutors. Again, some more precedent research. Yeah, the programs, the research labs, education hubs, conservation programs, a system with wetland spaces, zone for protection, so freshwater storage, things like this, you know, monitoring the biodiversity of the lagoon, fish farming, things like that. But these are all initial. Deeper contextual research. I think these came from the Atlas of the Lagoon, which is a fantastic website that we've been using, and we've been very thankful for those tutors for providing these resources for us to look at. How did Jesolo get fresh water? So Jesolo was the kind of the area of Venice, one of the island areas that I was looking at initially, and doing some research into where's this fresh water coming into the lagoon, where's it coming from, and what's actually the quality of the water within the lagoon, and do we need more fresh water? Do we need to kind of put these control points in the way to reduce the amount of fresh water coming in? Which I slowly began to realize that no, we need more fresh water into this, and this is kind of how my project's been growing, is the need to use the rivers and use the streams that are within the surrounding area of the lagoon to bring the water in. But if we bring too much water in, then the rivers are going to dry up. If we don't bring enough water in, then the quality of not only the quality of life, but the conditions of the lagoon is going to be depleting at a faster rate. And this isn't helped by factors such as sediment transportation not coming in, and obviously with overflooding, things like that. It's just ruining the lagoon so much more. Some articles that I was looking at, just understanding what are these kind of connections and benefits between nature and humans. Current and future works, salt marshes, how to construct them, things like that, and also looking at kind of the UN sustainability goals. History of the fortification of the Venice Lagoon. This probably was done, or should have been done, with the history that was prior to that, but it doesn't really matter because it's just a design diary, just a digital sketchbook. Just as long as it's being shown is fine. How climate change is dictating a new generation of buildings, so looking at factors such as the rise in temperatures and structural stability, flood zones, extreme low temperature areas, climate change, and how that will impact building designs. Maps that I wanted to create, these are the ones from the Atlas of the Lagoon, and how I can kind of create my own versions of them depending on the site that I've chosen to work on. Protection of the ecological state of the lagoon, breaking it down to 8 points. And it's going to be hard, it's going to be a challenge to kind of ensure that I can bring in as many of these points as I can to my scheme when it comes to creating it. So choosing eco-friendly activities, and also the most important ones being the reduction in noise pollution, recollecting all of the rubbish and remains from cleanups, volunteering, people working with the marine life, reducing plastic usage, becoming a responsible traveller. That's going to be mainly for the visitors that come. Conservation of water and reduced runoff, and reducing the carbon footprint. So lots of things to consider. There's obviously going to be so many more objectives that I would like the project to meet, and that's going to be formed in the way that I design the building, of course, over the next couple months leading up to the final submission, which is in the end of May. It's going to be very hard, but it's going to be exciting and enjoyable, I hope. More kind of research into the marine life. kind of the architectural, the architectural points that I wanted to kind of consider, architectural and landscape points. So the lack of sediment coming into the lagoon is a big problem. So a sustainable intervention needs to be kind of designed in response to this. Water treatment, this is something that my tutor John kind of put me on, this flocculation, coagulation, these processes of the water treatment, the things that I need to be considering, the things that I need to bring in, whether it's going to be in different zones within the design that I create, or in any other forms. So whether it's going to be doing interventions of along the river before it even gets to my site, and how I can kind of control the flow of the river before it even gets to the building that I'm going to be making, and how that's going to be impacting the lagoon on a long-term basis. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you keep an eye out for part 2, which comes out next week. That'll be showing the rest of the project and the preparation that I've been doing so far. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.